Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. We're still zooming away. I'm once again drinking a Manhattan.
And I'm still not drinking.
You're still being good? You got your
trusty soda water and my Youngstown State t-shirt. Not that I went to Youngstown State, but I am from Youngstown. So it's inherent that we all, being from Youngstown, apparently rep the local university. So.
Rep Y-Town. All right.
You know what's funny about that? So my cousin graduated from Youngstown State this weekend, actually, and she had to do it via virtually. So they put a big thing up on the TV. She put on her cap and gown and they took some pictures, and which is just really bizarre. Right. I mean, it's just now, mind you, actually I did go to my college graduation. I didn't go to my law school graduation or my high school graduation. High school I was at a track meet for state, and then law school I just didn't go. I was hungover, whatever. But the college one I did go to, and it's memorable. My parents were there. A lot of my teammates that, even had graduated ahead of me were there, and we had a great night before. We had a really good time that day. And so it was just a really special experience. And so very different than what these kids this year are experiencing across the board, from high school, all the way through college and graduate schools and things like that. So, just something to kind of point out with the times.
My niece graduated recently, and I think her ceremony is this week, and it's all virtual. Yeah. And they're really bummed out.
Yeah, I mean, and they should be. I mean, there's value to it. Now, there's going to be those people out there who will point out, I didn't go to my graduation, and I didn't
go to mine.
There's plenty of people who will have that sort of, whether it was high school or college, and they'll tell you that no one's missing anything, and it's all right, Grinch, turd, whatever.
My mom and grandmother were pissed when I didn't go to mine.
Yeah, I mean,
they were pissed.
Yeah, I mean, my parents are still really upset about the law school one. I didn't tell them when it was. My law school experience, it just, by the time I got to graduation, I really wanted it to be done. I was already burnt out just from, I worked nonstop through law school. I was a personal trainer. I was a bartender. I worked with the public defender. I worked with the state's attorney. I did, a big internship with a large law firm. I was going in to work with the public defenders, full time after. I was just done. I was just burnt out after. So, but my parents are still to this day pretty upset about it. Not going. So it's a big deal for some people.
I've committed lots of things to offend my mom since then. So there's that's slid by the wayside. But
did you wish her a happy Mother's Day today?
I did.
All right, good.
I did. Yeah, I called her and we talked for about 45 minutes.
Good. Yeah, I did.
In fact, she told me she liked my Dan Crenshaw article.
Oh, good.
Oh, that felt good.
It was good. I liked it. I would probably never write that. But just because it's our writing styles are different. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, mine is just a little bit different in terms of kind of what I'm writing to get shit off my chest in a more kind of not scholarly format, but that's kind of the direction it tends to go. It seems like, but yours was good, and people, connected us and Dan Crenshaw, although he never really kind of, did anything back. But I mean, listen, he may at some point, if it catches his eye.
Who knows? You're a bad person. You are a bad human being. You should be ashamed of yourself. No, the only thing I'm more upset about right now than what you just said is that it took me 10 seconds to process what you just said, you son of a bitch.
So what are we talking about next?
Yeah. All right. So on a very serious note, there was an incident in the town of Brunswick, Georgia, where a young man named Ahmaud Arbery was stalked and shot down is the best way I can think to say it. And this is one of those no-brainers because we saw on video, he's literally pursued by a pickup truck, which is being followed by another vehicle that's filming the whole thing. And they literally pivot one direction, the other direction, and shoot the guy dead in the street because they believe there have been a rash of burglaries in the area, which from what I understand were not even home invasions. They were like cars getting broken into, which isn't cool. But they saw someone and said, this guy looks like what we believe the perpetrator may be. They tried to stop him. They ordered him to submit to their commands. He was jogging, refused to do so, and they shot him to death on camera.
Yeah, and I mean, so, the other thing is, and this just came out today, that the local authorities there, the Brunswick authorities said that there was no reports of break-ins, car or home, like the 3 months leading up to the shooting. So what they said was their defense was, there had been break-ins that had been reported and he was the suspect that fit the description. Well, that turned out to be not true because the local authorities came out today and said, nope, there's no record of any break-ins in that neighborhood, like I believe 3 months prior to the shooting. So,
sorry to interrupt, but it's important to note the shooting occurred in February.
Yeah, I mean,
and these guys didn't get arrested until this week.
Yes, yeah. I mean, like there's a 75-day lapse between the time that the crime happened and when they were arrested. It's also important to note that the father, so it was a father-son duo and a third person. The father and son were in a pickup truck. The third person was behind. So like the scene, if you haven't seen the video, and I don't suggest that you watch it, I retweeted it and put it out there because it's one of those things that needed to go viral. People needed to see it to put pressure on local authorities to do something about this. This sat for 75 days and it clearly looked like it was going to be swept under the rug and nothing was going to happen to these two individuals or the three individuals involved with this kid's murder. Not an indictment, no sort of investigation of any value. And so I made sure there were a number of people who tweeted it out there to get outraged, to spark shock, and to kind of force someone to take a look at it, because you can't just have a murder like that in the middle of the street and have nothing come of it, right?
And I want to say one more thing that's important. The locals still didn't do shit. It took the Georgia Bureau of Investigations to get involved. So it took a state level agency to get involved.
I mean, and that's and again, and part of the reason why that had to happen is that the father was so it was a father-son combination that were in the white pickup truck. The father was a former police officer locally, and he was an investigator for the prosecutor's office, and I believe for more than one prosecutor's office in the area. So there were some serious concerns regarding conflict of interest with the local authorities and the father that was involved in the shooting, who ultimately was the one who pulled the trigger that killed Ahmaud Arbery. So it was important that I think the Governor Bureau of Investigations should have been brought in way earlier in this. I mean, almost as soon as it happened, given the father's, status and relationship with the people in local law enforcement. And so they were brought in better late than never. And since they were brought in, they came in, they looked at the video of Arbery being killed in the street. And then there's another video that had surfaced that they also looked at of Arbery going into a house that was under construction. It was a new construction house in the neighborhood. He was jogging along the path. You see the video. He goes into the house, and again, there's a video. There's actually a camera in the house that's being constructed. It's all studs. There's no walls. There's nothing of value in the house. He goes in. He kind of looks around. He looks at some of the different features of the house. He goes out and then he keeps jogging. There's a debate amongst people who are, I'm not sure what their purpose is, but they want to point out that, well, Arbery is a criminal because he was breaking into this house, right? Now, at the most you could say it's trespassing, right? Now, this is something that people do on a regular basis. New houses go up for construction. Random people pop in to look and see, oh, what's going on the inside. You know how I know this? Because it's part of what I do for a living. Part of my job is to build new construction homes. And I can tell you that I've been on jobs countless times where, because we build affordable housing in different neighborhoods, some of them are lower income neighborhoods, and, young kids will come in all the time, you know, just like, and they shouldn't be there. I mean, they should have hard hats on and they shouldn't be on the site, but they'll come in, and a lot of these kids have never seen something like this, right? They've never seen a new building being gone up close and in person, right? And we get kids as young as 10 years old, all the way to kids, you know, young adults in their 20s, just curious to see what it looks like when a house is being built. Right, like this is not some phenomena or something that no one's ever done before, and people are trying to paint this as this is some grand criminal act that needs to be thought of, that needs to be kind of brought into the equation. Now, some people are saying, well, let's just not paint him as some innocent jogger. Let's make sure that we acknowledge that he was trespassing, and that's a crime, but he probably didn't deserve to die for. Right, like that's literally the argument, which is insane. But if you want to say, okay, fine, he was trespassing, okay, fine, but that doesn't give you a right, because listen, the McMichaels didn't own the home, right? That was being built. It wasn't their property. They didn't own the home. So again, like the fact that they hunt this guy down, they cut off his path, they have weapons, they're armed, and then they make some sort of demands for him to stop. He has no obligation to stop for them under any law, other than some Jim Crow slavery bullshit from 100 fucking years ago.
Look, can I repaint this just in a weird way? You used to live in the same neighborhood I'm in now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not far now, but both of us had our vehicles broken into in the time that we've lived in this neighborhood.
Yep.
Let's just say that the word around the street, you know, local bar is that it's a group of teenage girls, a group of teenage white girls who've been breaking into cars to pay for whatever the fuck, cosmetics. So I decide I'm going to grab one of my handguns, walk out of the street. I see a teenage girl. I'm going to say, stop where you are. I want to make sure.
Right.
If I do that, I'm going to fucking jail, and I should. These guys shot this kid. And Steve, I'll tell you, the first time I saw this video, I honestly thought I was watching the wrong video, because I'm like, it was so calculated. It was so, and this is entirely on me and my misconception. I saw Brunswick, Georgia, and I assumed it's going to be some suburb of Atlanta, and I'm just, you know, like, how the fuck does this happen in a major city? Well, Brunswick, Georgia, it turns out, is a town of 15,000 people on the coast of Georgia, which does two things. One, it says, okay, at least the entire city isn't like just you can gun down black people in the street and get away with it. But two, this should have been way easier to sort out than it has been. It should not have taken 60 days or 75 days. In a town of 15,000 people, everyone should have known who this was and taken care of this. Or they recused themselves, great, but then the additional authorities should have been there like that, not waiting for social media to bring this up. Because if not for social media, Steve, this would have been swept under the rug and no one would have known shit.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, again, like,
rant over, sorry.
The state authorities, like there's sovereignty, right? Like, so the state can't just say, all right, we're coming in and taking over the investigation, right? I mean, like, local authorities have to call in the state for something like this, right? Like, if it didn't happen on like a state route or on, you know, property that's somehow managed or owned by the state, or it involves like a larger conspiracy that can be where you can bring, you know, like a heavier level of bevy of charges, like the state just can't come in and take over an investigation. Kind of like the FBI just can't come in and say, okay, we're taking over this investigation. They have to have a reason and standing to be able to do so, right? Okay. So that's part of the reason, and like that's why it was that's part of the reason it was handled the way it was. The local authorities wanted to keep the larger level state government out of it because of assumingly because of the connection to who the father was. Maybe they knew him. Maybe they wanted to throw him a bone, or maybe they just didn't want to deal with it. And it didn't make a big deal. It didn't make media when it happened initially. It didn't make national media. So they figured if they sat on it, that they could eventually it would blow over, and then things could go back to normal, and then they would be fine. I think they were starting. Obviously, they started to get comfortable. The real question, not the question, but one of the questions that I have is, who leaked the tape? You know, who leaked the video for people to see it? Because you have to wonder, did the person who was actually videoing, you know, the person who was videoing has been charged. But the question is, I
thought the video had not been charged.
No, the person who was recording, he'd been charged. He hasn't been arrested.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
He's been charged, but he hasn't been arrested. So you have to wonder, did he leak it due to a guilty conscience, kind of not thinking that it was going to go that far, and then the kid ends up shot, and he's like, oh, shit. So he gives the video to the authorities. He realized it's been February, March, April, 3 months, nothing has happened, so he leaks it because he can't sleep at night. Or did the video get confiscated by local police, someone in the police department who had seen the tape, didn't want to get themselves in trouble or have to deal with the backlash coming from local authorities and the Good Old Boy Network? Did they leak it secretly, hoping that this exact thing would sort of take place? I have no idea, but I mean, I would kind of like to know what happened, unless getting to the bottom of that then ends up getting, put someone in
a whistleblower in jail, right?
No, a whistleblower in jail, or put some sort of target on the person's back.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, yeah, not in jail, but yeah, big something. Yeah, because there are people. So I forget the name of the organization or the Facebook page or whatever that's supporting the McMichaels, the shooters.
Yeah, and I don't want to put it out there.
I'm not gonna give their name.
I put it out on Twitter, and I realized I probably shouldn't have done that, because it seems like the organization has grown. It started in the 17,000, and it grew to 50,000, and I believe it's got 70,000 followers now. And their prime mission is to, back and support the McMichaels father and son duo, which, I mean, is just, look, if people want to make the comparisons to George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, and you really can't compare the two. Seems and feels similar, but you can't. And the main reason is we don't have video, we don't have eyewitnesses. The only witness that we have is George Zimmerman. And so he's really the only person to give us any sort of idea as to what happened. And I don't think any of us, I think even the staunchest, most conservative people now look at George Zimmerman as a person that you may not necessarily be able to trust his kind of telling of what happened there. Now, what happened with him, he sees Trayvon Martin. He decides that he's going to go after him. He calls 911. They tell him not to go after him. He goes after him. He says he loses sight of Trayvon Martin, and then Trayvon Martin circles back. They get to a fight. Zimmerman is getting his ass beat, and he's got no other choice but to shoot Trayvon Martin. That's his story. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But it's different than what it's different than what we have here. This kid, goes into a newly constructed house on his run, and then he keeps on running, and then they stalk him down. They get out in front of him. They cut his path off. They hop out armed and engage him, and they give him no choice. Like, he can't pass. Now, what I would say is, at that point, when they prevent him from continuing on his path, he then has the right to stand his ground. The stand your ground law now applies to him, not them, because people are saying, well, he engaged the guy with the gun, and so the guy at the gun at that point has to defend himself. Like, no, the guy with the gun is impeding his path, right? That kid has no duty to stop for that man. None, zero, zip, nada, right? And he tried. They put a truck in front of him, and then the dad got out and ran around with the fucking 12-gauge shotgun and got in his way. So that kid at that point has no choice but to stand his ground and fight for his life, and he fought, and unfortunately, he lost.
Yeah, because they had guns and he didn't.
Exactly. I mean, and that brings and that kind of raises another question of, should you be armed when you go out for a run? Is that a smart thing to do? And does him having a weapon at that point in time level the playing field? And I don't know, but I mean, maybe it does, because listen, once they impede his path at that point, if he draws a weapon and says, look, you guys do your thing, I do mine. Listen, kid in the truck, you do something, if it's, you do, one false move out of you, I shoot this guy over here. I'm just trying to go on my jog and go on my merry way. And I don't know if that helps or hurt the situation, but I mean, maybe he walks out alive, or maybe you have a Mexican standoff until the police get there,
or maybe he shoots one of them, the other one shoots him. Who knows? Who knows?
But I mean, all I know is as it stood right there, him with no weapon, two guys with guns, and him without one, he didn't stand a chance.
Right.
Unless he's fucking John Wick, which clearly he wasn't.
Right. And the way I think of it is, I can't imagine he went on that run thinking in 1,000 years, people are going to stalk him and kill him. Like if I'm a concealed carry holder, we've talked about this on the show before. I almost never carry. I almost never run anymore. But like if I lived in a neighborhood where I didn't feel safe running without a firearm, I'd use it, get a treadmill. I mean, and I'm not, that sounds like victim blaming as the furthest thing from my intention, but this kid seems to have entered into this engagement with nothing but, I want to get some exercise. And boy, and maybe we are in a world where you need to feel like if I don't have myself protected at all times, I'm at risk. But that aspect, aside, the fact that he couldn't go on a run without being improperly, have the people attempt to improperly detain him and then take his life and then go months without any legal consequence for shooting someone in the street in broad fucking daylight. Again, Steve, when I saw this video the first time, I thought I was getting the wrong video. I'm like, this is in a residential neighborhood. It's broad daylight. And then it happened. I'm like, what the fuck did I just see?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and then the fact that you could say, well, he ran into a house under construction. No, he didn't steal anything, and he didn't do anything while he was there. But, I mean, it's trespassing. So we had every right, even though it wasn't our property, we had every right to stop him with guns and then shoot him.
Looking out my window, someone just jaywalked. I'll be right back.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's insane.
And so then LeBron James tweeted something basically saying that we're not safe, that things like the fact that things like this can happen shows how fucked up things are. And I'm badly paraphrasing, but that was the gist of his tweet. And Jason Whitlock, a man you've had some complaints with over the years, chimed in and basically accused LeBron of grandstanding and causing more trouble than he was causing good.
Yeah, I mean, what Whitlock said was that LeBron James was basically using hyperbole and then also compounding it by using this tragedy to enhance the LeBron James brand.
That's right, he said that. This is a shitbag thing to say.
Yeah, enhance LeBron James brand and make him stand out against Jordan, because Michael Jordan never really spoke out on racial issues or political issues or things like that. And so somehow, because of, you have the Jordan documentary, The Last Stand, going on, which I have yet to be able to watch, which is really annoying me because I really want to see it, even though I'm not a big Jordan fan. And I thought that it was really in poor taste by Whitlock. Now, Whitlock's main thing was that outrage on Twitter only gets us so far, and at some point we really have to go to the root cause of these issues and fight for that level of change. That's what he was trying to say. Now, the way he articulated it, and his reference to LeBron James basically feigning outrage to enhance his brand, that's bullshit.
Right.
I mean,
because LeBron's barely out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like LeBron has consistently been out in front on these issues. Now, if you want to say it was a poorly worded tweet, like LeBron James, the young man, he fired off a tweet. He's what?
4 years. 35.
Yeah, he's 35. I mean, shit. He's a little bit younger than me, but I mean, he tweets out. I mean, it was an emotional response to a really gruesome video. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. And then there was even someone else even came out, Dr. Boyce Watkins comes out and says, instead of LeBron being on Twitter, maybe he should do something for the Black community as opposed to, and so I had to reply, like, look, LeBron James actually started an entire school, K through 8. Those kids will be able to go to school at the University of Akron relatively for free. He committed to 2,500 students going to Akron, which is about I think it's some ridiculous amount of money, like $100 million in tuition and fees that he would pay if all 2,500 of these kids went to school. And it's just like, I don't know what more you want a person to do. And that doesn't include all the bikes and books and other causes that he's donated to and the monies that his foundations have raised. So going at LeBron James as if he's done nothing, or he's doing all this just to be
Right.
better than Jordan in some way, shape, or form is absurd. The kid is talked about constantly growing up in Akron with nothing, him and his mother, and how that made him feel. For him, he knew basketball was his only way out, but he also knows that these other kids, they don't have basketball, but they have their minds, and he wants to kind of help them with that. So calling LeBron James out on this because he was outraged on Twitter is just the wrong call. There's plenty of other people out there who are really outraged on Twitter, who their Twitter outrage doesn't result in anything, right? And those are the people that you have to call out. And I want to. There's one, one of the people that follow us, a fellow vlogger and podcaster, Benjamin Eads from the Whiskey Den. He lives in South Carolina, and he saw this Ahmaud Arbery video, and it really touched him, and he reached out to his black friends and his white friends, and they got together and they talked about what they saw and how it impacted them and what their experiences are. And he wants to have a broader conversation, on a platform like Facebook or something like that. And he asked if I wanted to be a part of it, and I told him absolutely. So we'll record it, and it'll be out there for people to see, kind of just a broad conversation, a bunch of different people from different walks of life, looking at a bad situation and trying to figure out, all right, how can we as individuals look at this, learn from it, and kind of teach each other to hopefully prevent something like this from happening around us. And there's value in that. You don't necessarily have to donate millions of dollars or any dollars. If you can have conversations and just kind of enlighten people around you, then there's value just in that in and of itself. So, I mean, for Jason Whitlock to come at LeBron James like that to me is bullshit. But it's par for the course for him, and I don't want to give him too much attention because there's so many people like him. Like, it's one of the things for, since Trump has really come on the scene, and I'm not saying that Whitlock is a Trump supporter or not. I mean, I'm sure he probably is, but and I don't know. I shouldn't even said that much. But the new thing is for black people to come out and appeal to the same white sensibilities that Trump has appealed to. And because they do that, whether it's a Jason Whitlock, a Candace Owens, that comic Terrence Williams, Terrence K. Williams, I don't know, there's Diamond and Silk, there's countless other people that, like, that's a way for black people to get quick, instant celebrity.
Jesse Lee Peterson.
Just come out, say the same talking points as your hashtag MAGA people, things that would appeal to Trump, things that are going to appeal to the middle class white voter. Do the victim blaming. Blame Ahmaud Arbery's shooting on him. He was a criminal. He was a thug. He's got a bad past. Why are we looking for justice for a criminal? Like, that's what Candace Owens said about him. Looking at these situations and pulling all this sort of, creating a diversion from what actually happened. You had two vigilantes who took a situation into their own hands that wasn't accurate, that they manufactured, that they created, and then turning around and blaming the victim, right? Like, black people and women raped are the only people who get blamed for crimes that happened against them. Women get blamed for the clothes that they wear or for being too sexy. And so somehow it's their fault that they got raped. Well, black people, like, kid gets murdered in the street, jogging down the street. Well, it's his fault. It's his own damn fault for being in the neighborhood. Or
he was wearing a hoodie.
Right, he was wearing a hoodie, or being in khaki shorts, or walking into a house under construction, where there's nothing of value that he could fucking steal, and then saying, it's his own damn fault. So that's just, that's kind of those sort of people are out there, and I think what has to happen is you can't lend power to those people's voices by being outraged by what they say and, blasting their names out there and repeating it over and over again. I know there's the idea that it's just like, well, you have to call that bullshit out. You have to shut it down. But because in this age in Trump, things have been flipped on their head. So the more you push back against those type of people and put their names out there and talk about how ridiculous they are, the more they sit there and just embrace it, right? It's just like that negative energy of you criticizing them and attacking them only makes them grow in strength and power, right? And the reality is Candace Owens has started to fade, and she has to do shit like this because it's the only way her name stays relevant. Otherwise, like if she doesn't say this, do we even think about her today at all? Absolutely not.
You know, I'm gonna point the finger at us because I think we did that a couple weeks ago or last week, along with John Oliver, Bill Maher, and Alan Cox. Alex Jones did that ridiculous "I will eat your ass" thing, and we all had a blast with that. And it was hilarious. But the fact is, I after the fact, I thought about it. I'm like, he's been largely deplatformed. He's become far less relevant. And he goes out there and says, "I will eat your ass." Yep. And we did it, and Bill Maher did it, and John Oliver did it, and again, Alan Cox locally did it, and we all talked about it. Yeah. And we gave that piece of shit what he wanted.
Exactly, and that's why we really have to be careful about deciding how we're going to handle this. I mean, I think the old way was to, and listen, to a large part, progressives and Democrats and liberals and, the progressive socials on social media, they've kind of created this monster, right? Because for the longest time, there was a good window there, towards the end of the Obama era, transitioning into Trump in the 2016 campaign, the hashtag Me Too movement, where if anybody said anything that group didn't like, then it was cancel culture. We're going to drag you. We're going to say all the bad things about you. We're going to destroy your career, whether it's Al Franken or it's Kevin Spacey. Not to say that Kevin Spacey didn't deserve it. Or
Alex Jones,
Benjamin, all these other people. Like, you say something we don't like, we're coming after you. We're going to deplatform you. We're going to guilt YouTube and Google and Facebook and Twitter into taking you out. All this other stuff. Okay, fine. Well, now the reverb from that is that these people are only coming even harder with their negative energy, right? Like, it's just like you can't, because what Candace Owens has done is, yes, she's on Twitter, but she does that PragerU sort of thing. She's got a podcast, and that's really how she gets her message out. So she doesn't really rely on, she doesn't rely on Twitter as much. She doesn't rely on YouTube as much, but she's got her podcast. YouTube has shown that they're not going to push too hard against, conservative voices like that, unless it involves guns to a degree. But that's how they're working it. So every time that they say something ridiculous and we blast it out there and we say their name over and over and over again, what it does is it takes people who don't know anything about them, and they go and they click around and they Google their names and they, and they search them. Sure. And whether they start to follow that person and believe them or not, it still feeds that person and what they've just done, right? It still brings them more energy, because part of what they're doing is trying to build a social media brand, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's a podcast, whatever. So, every little click counts and helps.
Agreed. But if the fact that social media brought at least attention to this and hopefully justice to this, I'm stacking in the good job social media thing, because again, if this happens 20 years ago, the kid gets a Saturday Night Special planted in his hand, and people say he was a thug who had a gun, and law enforcement does nothing.
Even if it happens 10 years ago, the reality is, chances are there's no video footage of it, right? There's no.
And without video footage, in a 50,000 pound person,
there's no camera phone. There's no camera phone. It happens. The kid's body is left there, and it's just like, I don't know what happened, or something or they drag his body off into the woods, and who knows? But it's one of those things where, you take the good with the bad, and I even got pushed back from there were some black friends of mine that kind of said, why would you put that out there? Black people being killed has created sort of a PTSD for some people, and raises a certain level of trauma, and we can't continue to look at that and show it. And I'm like, look, man, I've dealt with this stuff like right as close to you as in person and face to face as you can. As a public defender, I've gone to go talk to a witness and open the door in the projects, and the person's been dead on the floor. You never get that smell of a dead body out of your fucking nose. I've been in a jail cell with someone who was accused of murder that they may or may not have committed and has physically attacked me, I representing them, that person that came and attacked me in an interview room in a county jail, right? Like, so I've dealt with this on a level that most people have not seen, right? Like right up in person. It doesn't get any fucking closer. So don't talk to me about your fucking trauma, right? Like I've dealt with that. And you know what I had to do? I had to go see a therapist, right? Like, so if you can't look at a fucking video without going into some sort of trauma, right, then you have separate issues that you need to deal with. And now, to be fair, like people put trigger warnings and all that sort of stuff. Like there were a lot of trigger warnings with the video, so you don't necessarily need to view it. But,
you said don't view it.
Right.
At the beginning of the show.
Right. But at the same time, without that sort of social media pressure, getting that video out there and just shocking people into how could this happen? How could this possibly be? That kid and his family, they don't even get the early signs of justice that they have to this point with the people being charged and arrested. Now, we still have a long way to go. There needs to be a trial. There needs to, you need to have a jury. There needs to be a trial. They need to be convicted. And so you have to go through all that. And we're nowhere near any of that to this point. But we're a hell of a lot closer today than we were 2 weeks ago.
Right. Or when it happened. I mean, there are at least charges. I believe there wouldn't have been charges if not for the social media pressure. And I think that's a pretty safe statement. So there's a bunch of other things I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And one of them is, I know, right up your alley.
Yeah.
And that's your boy, Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
So Michael Flynn.
Hey, can we stop with this thing where every time we talk about anybody, it's my boy or my girl? Can we just stop that? It's fucking annoying. Right? Like Michael Flynn's not my boy. I love doing it so much, though. Just stop. It's in poor taste.
All right, I'll try.
The reprimand has been handed down. It is now so.
All right. In poor taste. Let's go back to how the show started. But anyway,
General, you eyeballing me, boy.
General Michael Flynn, the floor is yours, sir.
So General Michael Flynn, the Department of Justice came out today, or not today, but this week, and said that they were just dropping the charges against him, right? So what this essentially does is, and who Michael Flynn is, Michael Flynn was, he was a part of the Trump campaign back in 2016. He was going to be a part of the Trump administration once Trump was elected. And then you had a situation that came up where he was questioned on the FBI regarding the Russia investigation. And he ended up pleading guilty to lying to the FBI about his conversations with Russians regarding sanctions. And then he also admitted to some other crimes with working on behalf of Turkey in the United States. And, so he ends up pleading out, and he hadn't been sentenced. His sentencing kept getting pushed out. And now we're at a point where, the Attorney General, William Barr comes in and has decided, well, instead of trying to get a sentence reduced, Michael Flynn has, he ended up pulling his plea back and saying, you know what, instead of saying I did it, I am saying I did not do it. And William Barr and the Department of Justice said, you know what, we're dropping the charges. And so that's kind of where we stand. And what that does, it kind of works as, instead of the president having to pardon Michael Flynn, you have the DOJ saying, we're going to save you that time and energy and also the bad look of that, and we'll take the brunt of, the bad press, and we'll just drop the charges, and you don't even have to worry about pardoning him. And also by dropping the charges on him and completely forgetting about the fact that he's already pled guilty to all this stuff, what that does, it takes one more indictment and conviction off the record for Trump as it relates to the Russia probe, right, which helps to kind of chip away at the validity of, Trump being affiliated with Russia and the Russia collusion and everything else. And I think from our perspective, it's important to point out that this doesn't exonerate Michael Flynn. Under no circumstances is Michael Flynn exonerated, okay? Michael Flynn lied to the FBI about talking to Russia about easing sanctions that were issued by Obama, right? He did that. He had that conversation with the Russians early on in the transition period after Trump had been elected. He gets on the phone with Russia and says, look, guys, now that we're in office, we're going to ease up these sanctions on you guys. Don't worry, just give us time to get in and get ourselves situated. The FBI comes in and they say, hey, have you had talks with Russia about sanctions? You know, have you had talks with them about this? Michael Flynn lies, says, nope, no, I have not, right? Vice President Pence goes to Michael Flynn and says, hey, have you talked to Russia about sanctions? We haven't had that conversation yet, have we? Michael Flynn lies to Mike Pence, says, nope, sure didn't, right? So now FBI comes and says, well, we've been listening and we know for a fact that you actually did have these conversations with the Russians, right? Like, so why don't you tell us what really happened, right? So now Flynn is caught, right? He's caught in his own fucking lie. So then at that point, he's like, well, and so then they come back and they say, you know, is there anything else that you want to tell us? So now at that point, that's when he says, well, you know, when I worked for Turkey, I was doing some things that I probably shouldn't have been doing, basically working as a foreign agent for Turkish interests in the United States, which you're supposed to report, but I didn't. You know, but since I'm telling you all this, is there a way that we can get sort of a plea deal agreement so this doesn't quite go as bad for me? The U.S. agrees, and they get him a decent plea deal. And his sentencing was coming about, and they were trying to figure out what that was going to be, since he cooperated and he pled and he told them about Turkey and everything else. And then all of a sudden he gets new counsel. William Barr comes in, and all of a sudden now he's pulling that plea deal, and all of this is being based off of some notes that the FBI took about, you know, what's our purpose of interviewing Michael Flynn? Do we want to get him to lie? Do we not want to get him to lie? If he lies, do we confront him with other evidence? Do we advise him that, you know, lying to the FBI is a crime? Do we tell him what we know, what we don't know? Like, all of this is normal behavior for how you get questioned once you're in the hands of the FBI, right? None of this is new. None of this is scathing. None of this is surprising. The FBI's job isn't to, you know, they're not going to lay out their entire case, all the information they have against you. What they're going to do is give you an opportunity to be honest, tell the truth, and put it all out there and try to save yourself, right?
Or the opportunity to convict yourself, because lying to the FBI
well, no,
by
I mean,
definition is a crime,
hold on,
right?
because people get what you say, like you say that, and people think that that's entrapment, right? Like, and it's not entrapment, but what I'm like, I get what you're saying, but you, like, by you saying that the way you said it, you feed right into the, you know, Trump administration narrative of the FBI is doing something that they're not supposed to do, right? So the FBI literally goes in and they say, all right, tell us what happened, right? And that's an opportunity for you to tell the truth. Is it or is it not?
It is. What I'm trying to say is...
So stop it right there. It's an opportunity for you to tell the truth. Once you don't tell the truth and you lie, right, then that's on you. Lying to the FBI is a crime. Now, General Flynn also admitted under oath, mind you, that he knew at the time that he lied to the FBI. He knew at the time, General Michael Flynn, general in the United States Army, knew that lying to the FBI was a crime. Okay, he admitted that under oath, right? So none of this changes anything. So the idea that the FBI somehow entrapped him,
which is not what I was saying.
I know that's not what you're saying, but that's what other people are saying. And what you're saying almost helps them. So I'm trying to help you, not help them.
Help me, not help them. Okay.
Exactly.
Help me, help you.
You know, I'm just, what I was trying to do is just kind of narrow the focus and so people understand how this works, right? Like, so the FBI is not going to tell you everything they have. They're not going to tell you everything they know. They will tell you your basic rights, but they don't have to tell you everything, right? They're going to give you an opportunity. If you go, see, here's the thing. If Michael Flynn walks in there and actually tells the truth, then none of this actually happens, right? If he goes in and says, yes, I talked to Russia, we talked about the sanctions,
it's not legally binding, you know, not
right. Like if he goes in and he tells them that he had a conversation with whoever from Russia, and they talked about this, and they talked about the sanctions, and they talked about easing them. Should he have done it when he did it without permission from Pence or whatever? He could say, no, I probably shouldn't have, but I took it upon myself, given the position that I was in the government, to start to ease their minds so that it could help our relationship with them, and we can get this government up and running. If he says that going in, then it's a whole different ballgame for him completely, right? Because now at that point, what are you going to charge him with, right? It wasn't necessarily a crime. It wasn't a crime for him to talk to the Russians, right? It doesn't look good with this whole Russia investigation, but that's not a crime. The crime comes into play when he lies about that conversation, right? That's what he was guilty of. He was guilty of lying to the FBI, and that was on his own accord. He wasn't tricked into doing so.
And you covered in the beginning of this conversation as to why the DOJ has a political incentive to drop the charges, because it changes some narratives. And the truth is, everyone is still talking 90% about coronavirus. I'm glad we haven't been doing that on this show today, anyway. But this is a big deal that's slipping under the radar. I'm trying to think of a good comparison.
I don't think it's slipping under the radar. I mean, it's being covered by all the major networks and news outlets and media outlets. It's a big conversation in DC. Lawyers across, bar associations across the nation have addressed this. Now what happened? Now listen, there has been a new development, and the DOJ. There's a certain document that needs to be signed and submitted to the judge in order for the judge to look at it and accept it. Now, there's a big question of whether the judge on this case will accept the DOJ pulling out of this. Hold on one second. Yeah, babe? You need socks, shoes, you need pants, and a jacket. No. Yeah, you got to put pants on. No. Kiddo, it's cold outside. No, I'm not. You're not? Okay, you know what? Fine. You don't want to put on pants? Fine. But you got to put on socks and shoes, and you got to wear a jacket. Sorry.
Welcome to podcasting in quarantine.
I don't even know if I just won or lost that. Anyway,
I think you lost, actually, because you said you don't have to put pants on. You should at least let the. She's wearing shorts.
She's wearing shorts.
I want that on the record.
Right, she is wearing shorts. It's a little bit chilly. I mean, I think it's only 50 degrees, so I feel.
Which is another thing we talk about, the fact that it snowed in Cleveland on May 8th, which is bullshit. No, all right, but that gives us 65?
55.
She'll figure it out.
Yeah. She'll come in and just be like, it's cold outside.
Close out on Flynn, because there's a couple other things I really want to get to.
No, I just think that I want to point out there's not, obviously from our level, there's not a ton that we can do about General Flynn. I mean, the DOJ has decided they're going to drop the charges. Now, the one thing I wanted to add is that there's a form that needs to be signed and submitted to the judge for the judge to accept it. Well, the DOJ did it wrong. Like they didn't sign the form it wasn't signed appropriately. So it has to go back. It has to be redone, and then it has to be resubmitted to the judge. So it's a minor sort of blip, but it's just a microcosm of this entire administration. In other
words, a classic fuck up. Like all you got to do is get the paperwork right.
Like literally, all you have to do is just get it signed, and they somehow could not do that right, which is amazing. But now the question becomes: will the judge accept this? Just dropping other charges, and if he does, what does that mean? Because essentially, this completely circumvents our criminal justice system, right? I mean, it's just like, you know what? Yeah, the guy admitted that he did it. Yeah, yes, the guy committed a crime. Yes, he admitted that he did it, but he's one of my guys. I don't like the fact that you said the things that you said about him and therefore me. So, you know what? DOJ is going to just wipe it out, and we're going to say it's not even a crime. Screw it. I mean, this is worse than the president pardoning him, in my opinion, because at least that follows the criminal justice system that we have in place, right? The guy admitted to the crime. He's been found guilty of the crime. He's sentenced to the crime. Okay, and the president comes in and says, you know what? I pardon you. We're going to wipe this all out, and you get a fresh start. Okay, well, then that's within presidential power. We allow that to happen. It's in our Constitution. It is what it is. But this is something completely different. This is the DOJ saying, when one attorney general is there, what you did was wrong, to the point where we brought charges, you pled guilty to those charges, and we're about to sentence you. Now a new attorney general comes in and says, you know what, he's one of us, so let's get rid of all this. And that's problematic. Just get rid of if you don't like, if the attorney general that you have in place does not, Eda Marie, put a jacket on. If the attorney general that you have in place allows something to happen that you don't like, get rid of him, put somebody else in, and then clean up the mess. That's a bad look. It feels very, organized crime-ish, mob tie-ish, And it's just not how our government should be run. Again, if Flynn pleads, Flynn is found guilty, he's sentenced, and Trump comes in and wipes the slate clean. There's certain criticisms of it, but I'll accept that because again, it's within the powers of the Constitution. This is something different. This is something completely different and really bastardizes our criminal justice system, and it should raise a lot of red flags. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, because listen, if the next person to come in is a Democrat and they do some shit like this, I have the same criticisms for them, right? And it would go directly back to Trump and William Barr and what they've just done. And I would hope that no other president attorney general combination allows something like this to happen under any circumstance, right? Unless the person that is being charged, it's a situation where they're being completely railroaded, right? Like you have video of someone else committing a crime, but yet that's the person that's being prosecuted for it. Then the DOJ steps in and drops charges. But this person did the crime. We know it. He admitted it. He admitted it under oath. He admitted under oath that he knew what he did was a crime, and yet still somehow we're going to allow him to walk away from it. That to me that's problematic.
Your passion is clear, and you mentioned before we were doing our pre-show talk. You said you could talk about this for hours.
We can go ahead and we can end it there. There's nothing more.
Because there's a
I rest my case, son.
There's a couple stories I really want to get to. There's a former city councilman in Antioch, California, named Ken Turnage, who spoke out and basically said we should just let herd immunity take care of the coronavirus. The weak and the old and sickly will die. That's nature. And as far as the homeless people go, well, they'll die, and that'll relieve a lot of burdens of our resources from our city. So that's a good thing. And shockingly, the city council said, you don't get to do this job anymore. We've had the whole free speech versus, speech without consequence argument 150 times on the show. Don't need to do it again. But the fact that this guy thinks you should be able to keep this job after saying that shit, like, yeah, old sick people, you're going to die. And homeless people, they're just a burden. So let's let this clean that up too. I think you still get to be part of your civic leadership. I'm happy ending this discussion with saying Ken Turnage II from Antioch, California, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, but look, here's the thing. He's not alone in that thinking. There are a number of people who don't have his platform or position, and not that he had this great giant platform and position of power, but
position matters.
Yeah, position does matter, but there are a number of people who support Trump, who support, reopening the economy, reopening their locality, wherever they are, their state, their city, their county, and saying, look, whatever happens, happens. I'm healthy. I'm this, I'm that. Everyone else who dies from it, well, that's nature. You're going to die anyway. You can't stop it. So why are we fighting so hard? People have to make money. They have to put food on the table, and we can't be afraid of a virus. Okay, that's one way to look at it, but here's the problem. Which some of those people are finding out the hard way, even here locally. I know some people locally that had that very same mentality until they ended up in the Cleveland Clinic with, in the ICU from this. A woman from my gym was very said this was all bullshit and screw that. And she was healthy. She's 45 years old, a fitness professional most of her life. She was very anti-COVID, said it was all hype, and she was fine and opened up the economy. Didn't hear from her for a while. Come to find out, there's a GoFundMe for her because she's in the hospital at the Cleveland Clinic.
And I hope she gets better.
Yeah, sure. I hope she gets better. I do. But it's just like, it's weird. You hope she gets better. She hopes she gets better now. She's rooting for. I'm sure she's rooting for all sorts of shit to happen that she wasn't rooting for. So it'll be, it'll be interesting to see what her thought process is. If she's able to make it out all this. I don't know. I don't know her that well. But we'll see.
There have been a few folks in the Trump inner circle or the Trump-Pence inner circle who have now tested positive, including Stephen Miller's wife, who is like a Trump, not advisor, but a media secretary or something. And she's now tested positive, although I believe she's asymptomatic. And I hope they're all okay. But I also hope this sparks
I think, yeah, and that's the other thing too. I mean, and there's a lot. Listen, there's a lot of nuance with this whole thing, because getting it isn't an automatic death sentence. It's not like getting AIDS in the 80s. But I mean, like it affects different people in different ways. Some people will get it and will have no symptoms, like you said, asymptomatic. Other people will feel under the weather for a couple of weeks and then they'll bounce back. Other people will feel a lot worse. Like my sister got it. She said it literally felt like a train hit her. She went to the hospital a couple different times, never had to go into ICU. But she was touch and go with some really aggressive symptoms there for a minute. And she's still feeling the effects of it, but she's back to work. Mind you, working on a COVID positive unit at where she works. And other people will need to go into the hospital and they will go into intensive care and they will need a ventilator, but they will live. So this disease has multiple manifestations, and so testing positive for it means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And so for the Trump administration, if you have a number of people who test positive for it, there's something to keep in mind. If you have a number of people who test positive for this disease in the Trump administration, but remain asymptomatic or have minimal or mild symptoms, they are only going to push harder and louder for, see, this isn't that big of a deal. Trust me. Like that is the way that they're going to spin it, right? Like, oh, well, they got it. Look, fine. Look, Katie's fine. This guy's fine. This guy's fine. Look, they're all fine. They got it. They're fine. Let's open everything back up. And the few people that get really sick, it is what it is. We're really, really sorry, but got to get the economy going. Like that's how this is going to go.
Right. There's one other thing I want to hit on really quick. Actually, two things really, really quickly, because there's two other things I really want to talk about for fun. The governor of South Dakota has threatened two tribes, the Oglala Sioux tribe and the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, who have set up checkpoints on roads entering into the reservations, saying they want to be able to control who comes in and out because the healthcare provided in our communities is not great, and we want to protect our community from COVID-19. And the governor is putting a slap on that and saying you have to reopen. Now, I know personally from living in Western New York that sometimes these tribes run right through major highways. The Route 90, as you enter, as you try to go from Pennsylvania to Buffalo, New York, you enter the Seneca Nation. And if the Seneca Nation wanted to, and there were some fights years ago, they said, no, you're on our property now, you're on our territory, we're a sovereign group, we have the right to tell you no. And they do. And these groups in South Dakota these tribes in South Dakota are saying, for a very legitimate reason, we want control of this. And I just want to say I support their right to do that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, and I'm not sure why so by doing this, is this causing a major issue?
I don't know which roads go through their territories. Let's put this on a back burner thing to keep an eye on. But like I said, if the Seneca Nation in New York State said, we want checkpoints into and out of Seneca Nation because we want to protect ourselves, that would shut down Interstate 90 going from just north of the Pennsylvania, north and east of the Pennsylvania border to the rest of the East Coast, because I-90 goes through Buffalo, across New York State to Boston. So that's something I want to keep an eye on. Another thing I really want to keep an eye on is the former director of BARDA, the government biological response team division. His name is his last name is Rick Bright is his name, and he filed a whistleblower complaint, and it's a really significant one to me. Yeah, because of my interest in the pharmaceutical industry, but he's named some certain things where deals were getting offered to companies with associations with high dollar consultants and the likes of Jared Kushner, where money was going to organizations to provide things that the government doesn't need under the guise of COVID response. And this is just starting to develop. Look up Dr. Rick Bright and look up some of these stories. There are millions of dollars getting thrown around that really concern me. But all right, so that's the legitimate stuff that needs to be talked about. I have to bring this up, and we talked about it a bit, but a woman in Port Clinton, Ohio, called 911 multiple times during the obvious circumstances we're under now. And the gist of her 911 call was, I need the fire department to come to my house because my pussy is on fire and I need someone to come put it out with his hose. After she called multiple times saying this, she did get a 911 response. The police came and arrested her. And this might make me a horrible person, but I find this absolutely hilarious. My pussy's on fire.
Yeah, I mean, it's Port Clinton, which,
About an hour west of here.
Yeah, it's a lake town. It's a place where people go in Ohio in the summer to just drink and be on the water. Not always a great combination. And so it's not surprising that something like this will come out of Port Clinton. It is hilarious. I mean, nobody is hurt or harmed, and I'm sure she'll just get a slap on the wrist and probably told, "Why don't you drink a little bit less?" But to call because your crotch is on fire and you want a fireman to come and put it out with his hose, and listen, her mugshot. I wouldn't be a taker, but listen, I mean, obviously there's always a taker.
I'm getting lonely. My dry spell goes way past March 16th when they locked us down. So
goes beyond the coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
There's deeper issues at play here.
There are deeper issues at play there. And all right, so this is something that I actually think we could probably argue about for a long time, but shouldn't. There's been so much hype on the internet about the invasion of the murder hornets, which I think is fucking hilarious. First of all, the pictures of these things are terrifying. They could get as long as 2 inches long with a wingspan of over 3 inches, and a 3-inch hornet or 2-inch hornet flying at me would scare the shit out of me just like anyone else. Now, I've researched this with relatively lightweight research. I mean, YouTube videos, Wikipedia, things like that. You
haven't researched it. You've looked into it.
All right, fine. I've looked into it. Well, I trust Wikipedia. But there's a video of a guy who's like, one of his things is to get stung by various horrible insects. And he gets stung by this thing, and it is immediately like sends him sprawling in his arm. I don't want to fuck with these things. Having said that, they are not invading the country. They're not swarming across oceans and finding their way in. There's there've been sightings of them in Western Canada and in Washington State. And if you're a beekeeper, this is a big deal because these things annihilate.
So what's your point here? What's your point here? What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to say, calm the fuck down. Murder hornets are not coming in droves.
All right, just stop. So, First of all, the things are already here. So to say that they're not coming is
they're in Washington.
Okay, well I've seen things where they've been seen on the East Coast. So I'm not sure what qualifies you to say no, they're going in Washington. Like I saw
everything I've seen. All right,
I've seen it on the So I'm sorry, I didn't know you had a monopoly over murder hornet news.
I believe a woman said, "Oh, murder hornet stung my pussy, and that's why it's on fire."
Okay.
I think that's
that being said, one, they're already here. Whether it's I'm not sure why it being in Washington doesn't quite matter. I mean, it's still in the United States, it's still here. And yeah, I mean, they are problematic because they kill bees. Bees are a major part of the ecosystem. And I mean, they don't just they don't just kill bees. I mean, they go in and they fucking annihilate entire hives.
They do.
It is literally the story of basically every alien sci-fi Marvel movie, right? Like they come in, they destroy a planet, they suck up all its resources, kill everything there, and they move on to the next one. That's what these things do. They only do it to beehives. And we need bees to pollinate the flowers of the trees, and it gives us fruits and vegetables and all that wonderful shit. So it could be problematic. I mean, I don't think that they're gonna, like you said, come and storm, swarm the streets, and there's gonna be like a black cloud of murder hornets everywhere. But it's just something to look out for. I mean, if you see some giant bug that you're not aware of, with fucking vampire fangs coming at you, then you better have a baseball bat to kill these things. Like, it's not something you want to swat at with your hand.
Actually, true, but they also say just leave it alone. It'll leave you alone.
They say that about no, fuck that. They say that about regular hornets and yellow jackets, and those fuckers say those things will attack you for damn near anything. So I don't buy that.
Well, to that point, all these close-up videos of the murder hornets, any insect of that nature zoomed up close is fucking terrifying.
Yeah, but these things look a lot more intimidating than a fucking yellow jacket.
If you, well,
I mean, look,
they're huge.
Their fangs,
they're an inch and a half.
Their fangs alone are. I mean, those things are large. They're larger than any other insect of that in that genre or whatever phylum. And I like, yeah, people don't want to get stung by these things, and I think being aware of a possible insect invasion, even if it's in a small region of the country, I mean, listen, we've seen small disruptions in supply chain to this point really fuck up a lot of things. So, I mean, if these things go out and they wipe out a bee population in a small section of the country, that could screw the supply chain in that particular state, in that particular region, and it could actually have a ripple effect. So I don't think it's, I don't think it's being overhyped. I mean, I think there's, like, listen, you ever seen a fucking thing that looks like this that could fly around? I mean, have you?
Yes.
No, you have.
Yes, I absolutely have. Absolutely have. And I'm amazed you haven't either, because you've been to Maryland. If you go to a park in Rockville, Maryland, you will see signs that say, beware of wasps. Now, I know you think that means white Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
No. You're right. Those things are
fucking huge and terrifying.
And there's a lot of them. Like, they don't, like, those things roll in packs.
Yes. So, and they've been there for 30 years. Well, they've been there for hundreds of years, but I've known about them for 30 years. They're terrifying. They don't affect your daily life, even if you live in those areas. Just be careful.
That's not true. Yes, they do.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, look, I once hit one with a basketball. I once hit one of those wasps. Literally, it flew by me, and I flung a basketball at it, and I hit it, and I didn't knock it down.
I mean, so to say that they don't affect your daily lives, like the city went out of its way to put signs up to say, watch out for these things.
They've been there since, those signs have been there since at least 1989, because I was there in 89 when they happened, and there aren't murder wasps from Maryland flooding the internet. I'm criticizing the internet hype because you slap the name murder in front of anything, and by definition, it becomes scary. We did a show where we talked about murder birds, and I am far more concerned about murder birds than I am about murder hornets.
I don't understand why I can't be concerned about both. I'm sorry, I don't like being bit and stung by shit. I don't want to be eaten by a fucking bird. I don't want to be stung by this fucking hornet. Like, I don't understand why I can't have concern. Fuck you, I've got concern about it.
It just crushes your chest with its beak. All right, we should wrap this up.
Yeah.
But I am not on the murder hornet as my big concern.
Do not let me fucking catch one. I swear to God, I will release one in your house. You thought it was bad when I was going to roofie you. Now you're getting molly.
You were going to molly me.
Now I'm going to molly you and drop a fucking murder hornet in your house. And just like, well, now who's overhyping shit?
I've got a shot. Oh, here we go. Shotgun right behind me. I'll be fine.
Shooting holes in your house while you're fucking rubbing on your bald head. Oh, this fucking murder hornet.
Thank you for listening to Whiskey Congress. We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and Twitter. Jim at whiskeycongress.com if you want to email me. Steve at whiskeycongress.com if you want to email him. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Later, man.
Yep.